This is Booking It to Financial Freedom, show number 5.
People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So when you think you have your why, you need to ask yourself, is that actually a what? Is it a thing, or is it actually my intrinsic why?
People say every single person on this planet is probably the best at something. It's a matter of finding it. You're going to fail probably finding your why. You're going to fail starting a new business. You're going to fail in a relationship or whatever if you don't go out and take risks and try to find that. You'll never know.
No, why isn't a goal. It's the overarching motivation for how you're living your life.
If you're extremely passionate about a subject, whatever your cause is, you will pull in people around you.
Welcome to Booking It to Financial Freedom, where we explore literature from some of the most successful experts in their field to help you build a blueprint for personal growth and financial freedom. Join us as we examine a new book every month and break down key concepts to help you get out of the rat race and on track to start building a life better than you ever imagined.
Hey everyone, I'm your host, Amanda Schneider, realtor and investor, and I'm here with my co-host and teammate, Jamie Booth. Hey, Jamie.
Hey, Amanda. Great to be back for episode 5, where we're going to start deep diving Start With Why by Simon Sinek.
Yeah, it is a good one.
I'm glad to be back. How's your last week been?
It's actually been really good. We together have had a really good week so far. You had a listing that went live on Monday, and the market has shifted just a little bit. I don't know if this is something that's kind of temporary, but do you kind of want to tell them about the activity that you had on the listing and the offers, et cetera?
Yeah, I was super apprehensive about the listing because of the market conditions that we're in right now. Very cold. I mean, this is the off season for real estate anyway. So to get that listing on, literally within 5 minutes of it being listed, we had people scheduling appointments. The first day we had viewings, I think the first 4 viewings, we had 4 offers.
Yeah, it was amazing.
And we got the house under contract within this 2 days. Yeah. It was amazing.
Yeah. And I guess we're just kind of attributing it to interest rates have gone down. So for, like VA loans right now, it's about 5.25%, I think 5.5% maybe for conventional, which I mean, they were up higher 6s, even 7 at some point last year. So I think just that little bit of a change in market is bringing some buyers in. So not quite sure if that's going to last, but we're really grateful that things went as well as they did.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have asked for a better outcome for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you kind of wanted to share some personal reasons or just why you think that we should, read this book and why it's so pivotal that we kind of bring it on as one of the first couple books.
Yeah, absolutely. So it kind of ties into our first book, Robert Kiyosaki, with Mindset, with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. One of the 2 biggest takeaways I got from this book was obviously your major why is very important for you to find. And it's harder to find than most people realize. Where we've had some conversations just recently. Yep. Your why can evolve or whatever, but just to have your big why, it's like a mission statement for your life, right? It's what drives you. Okay, and then the other side of this book, which I think because it's very oriented towards businesses. Yes. Not so tailored towards personal growth. I mean, it is, but it's definitely leans a lot more towards a business aspect of it. But what I think is very interesting is for someone who hasn't started a business before, they can literally take this, not necessarily as a blueprint, but it's a really good grounding start to get you thinking about what you can put into your business to grow your personal wealth.
Yes.
Right. You don't want to start a business, based on a product. You have to find your why first, and then that can drive you forward. Yep.
And for those people that do want to start a business, but they don't know what exactly they want to do, or they, maybe it's a service oriented or product oriented, but they just can't find that right thing, is first they need to look intrinsically to really identify their why, which we're going to talk about today. And maybe that will help them come up with the product or service, the what of their business.
Yeah. And by having a big why, right, and that you're extremely passionate and you believe about, it not only motivates you to go forward, it motivates people who are around you, your employees, all that stuff. It gives you a purpose. It guides you in your decision-making process. If, you're trying to, troubleshoot problematic situations, and it also drives you when times get tough, right? So you can lean on your big why when things don't seem like they're going right for you. You lean on your why, you dig in, and you continue forward towards your goal.
Right. Something I really like that he does in the book is he basically defining your why and leadership is basically synonymous. At least that's what he says in the book. And I mean, I would argue that this is absolutely true. And even if, those of you out there are just beginning your journey and maybe don't think of yourself as a leader, if you're listening to our podcast and your mind is already starting to shift towards that financial freedom, maybe breaking out, starting your own business, starting your own investing, then you are a leader. Maybe you're not the best with leading people or inspiring, but as you start to gain more knowledge, people are literally going to flock to you and ask for that mentorship. So it's really important that you understand why you're doing what you're doing. Yeah,
you're already displaying the traits and the desire to move forward. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of breaking out of your shell if you haven't explored that yet.
Yeah, and I just wanted to share a quote from Simon Sinek from the book. He says, "Whether individuals or organizations, we follow those who lead not because we have to, but because we want to. We follow those who lead, not for them, but for ourselves. This is a book for those who want to inspire others and for those who want to find someone to inspire them." So it's really a lot about inspiration and what drives you every day.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, if you're extremely passionate about a subject, whatever your cause is, mm-hmm. you will pull in people around you mm-hmm. because you'll be so motivational, inspirational to those people. They're going to start believing in your cause as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. So as we normally do with our podcast, we kind of break the first couple chapters into what we consider the two kind of biggest key points. And so the first one is, he says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And what's so interesting about this is he goes into great detail talking about some companies that we all know. He talks about Apple. He talks about what was the other one? He used Dell, some large ones that we're all familiar with. And he talks about some of them that do a really good job of defining their why and some of them that don't. And the issue is that most organizations, especially the ones that maybe don't end up lasting very long, they are actually starting with a product, like you said in the beginning, rather than starting with mm-hmm. their why. So they truly don't know why they are selling that product or service, which then means they don't understand who their customers are and they don't understand why their employees are their employees.
Yeah, I think this statement and this piece specifically zeroes in on products, right? Mm-hmm. So building a computer or whatnot. But I think it very much ties into you personally, right? So not only you can look at this from two different points, either from a business standpoint, I'm going to build a product, and if I don't, they don't buy it as, compared to my big why, right, as to why I'm building the product. It's the same thing for you personally. If you don't believe in your why, mm-hmm. you're not going to follow through with it. Yes. So I think the big why and the importance of the why is because if you don't believe in it yourself, it's like a goal that you over exaggerated, right? You say, oh, my goal is to do walk 5 million miles this year. Mm-hmm. It's a big goal. It's, but if you don't believe it,
yes,
personally inside yourself with every fiber of your being, your brain is not going to believe it.
Yep. You're going to quickly give up. And yep. when times get tough, you're not going to have that intrinsic reason and that fulfillment to get you through those hard times, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So he gives an example in the book, which is my favorite metaphor. But so he says that there were some American car makers that went and visited a Japanese car making facility. And basically they, saw each of the stages of the different, the conveyor line or whatever they do when they build a car.
Right.
Obviously, I'm not mechanically inclined. But when they get to the very end, he asks where their station is with their mallets, because the Americans were using mallets to pound in the doors to make sure that they fit correctly.
Right.
And the Japanese car maker just kind of sheepishly says, well, we don't need mallets because we decide in the very beginning, we know what the purpose is, to have a well-fitting door. So we design our cars in the very beginning to make sure that that door fits perfectly. And so I just think that's an amazing metaphor because it's how most of us live our life. We live our life like that American car maker. We're going along, things seem really smooth, and then we have a hiccup and we just immediately react. And that may solve the problem in the interim. But then what happens when the problem comes up again, or it comes up repeatedly? We're not identifying why it is these problems are happening and how we can fix that by really identifying our why and our purpose. Because Simon says, whenever you have those issues, you need to go back to your fundamental why you're doing something.
Yeah, he also uses the example of leaders, like in the military or whatever it may be. They manipulate situations to produce an outcome that they want, as opposed to having an overall mission statement to begin with. Like this is our mission statement, and this is what's going to happen. But these guys just basically come up with a product at the end goal, and all they do is manipulate the process that all the way through to come up with the outcome that they're looking for, as opposed to having a bigger picture to begin with.
Exactly. Yeah, he makes a huge distinction in the book of really understanding, I'm going to use the word twice, what what's are versus what a why is. So when you think you have your why, you need to ask yourself, is that actually a what? Is it a thing, or is it actually my intrinsic why? So Lindsay and I were actually having this discussion, and he's off camera. He didn't want me to share this in case he comes back on the podcast, so he's
our producer today.
Yeah, that's right, he is. But what's so great is from the last episode, he actually had a local investor here reach out, and they had coffee. And one of the things that they ended up talking about was this investor was just saying how, I mean, he's been investing for 10 years, but he hasn't done much over the last couple of years because of how competitive the market was. And he was just struggling because he wanted to add to his portfolio and add another door and another door, but he can't find a deal. And so what Lindsay told him is that he is basically kind of thinking about the whole concept wrong, because first he needs to understand, why are you even investing in the first place? So once you have your why, then what does it take to get there, which in that case is probably a dollar figure. So figure out what that dollar figure is, and then how it doesn't always have to be another apartment building or another, single family. It's not about acquiring more and more properties. It's about figuring out how you can earn that money. Maybe it's another investment. Maybe it's cutting down on your expenses, that kind of stuff. So it's not the what of acquiring the properties, it's the why and how that gets you there. So, yeah. Yeah,
that's really cool that that happened.
Yeah. We're becoming famous already.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, but anyway, it was kind of an aha moment for me, because Lindsay and I we've had that throughout our career too, of like, okay, we have 15 doors now, we need 16 doors. And especially if you listen to Bigger Pockets, they'll have investors on there that have 100, 200 doors, which is amazing. And obviously that's adding to their cash flow, but the doors themselves are the what's. It doesn't always have to be a door.
Right.
It's finding out how to achieve the why.
No, absolutely. And once you get that why tuned in, like what you start producing just kind of falls into place, right? So you start moving forward, you get that momentum, you get that big why, and then everything else just kind of follows in.
Yeah, absolutely. And Simon Sinek talks about it's the difference between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. So extrinsic, is something like rewards and punishments, which in the beginning might work really well, but it's not the thing that carries you through. So the intrinsic is really, a rooted sense of purpose and fulfillment. So the why, again, is going to be something that's intrinsic. And something I find really interesting is he said that we actually all have our why within us by the time we're like older teenagers. So before our 20s, we already have our why rooted inside of us. So it's not a matter of me sitting down and being like, okay, I got to figure out my why. It's me sitting down and going through the exercises to find the why that's already within me.
Right. Taking action, right? Like I said, you might have your why, you'll know it by your mid-teen years, but if you don't have enough courage to go out and take, chances and risks and all that stuff to grow yourself personally, you might never find your why. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways for me is you have to force yourself out of your comfort zone. And we talked a lot about this in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and we'll probably most certainly talk about this in the future, but taking risks and growing yourself personally so you can discover what your why is. Sometimes you have to go through certain things in life to make make certain things resonate with you, some life-changing event or some life-changing failure, goes back to the entrepreneurial side. It's like, most business owners fail multiple times before they finally have a successful business. And that is part of the growing process. And if you're too scared to go out and do that, you might never ever find your why. And that's tragic, really.
Agreed. And you may have, even though Simon says you can only have one why, you might have multiple whys until you find the actual why. It's just like, changing a hat. You might have to try on one or two for a while and see if that's truly the thing that gets you to wake up every day and be motivated for your next steps.
Yeah, absolutely. You'll find what really drives you forward. It's kind of the same thing that people say. Every single person on this planet is probably the best at something. It's a matter of finding it. And like I said, again, if you don't go out and take risks and try to find that, you'll never know.
Yep. And that's why we have this podcast, is to encourage people to get outside their comfort zone, for sure.
Hopefully. Yep.
Yeah. So you will find that in this book, he kind of, I don't want to say repeats himself a lot, but he's really trying to just hone in on the most important topics and really make you understand what your why is. So one of the examples or the illustrations that he uses is called the golden circle. So this is basically just the framework that explains why some organizations are able to inspire, why others cannot. So if you have a copy of the book and you look in there, you'll see it's an actual diagram, but it basically looks kind of like a small bullseye. You have a small circle and then a bigger one and then a bigger one. So that middle, that bullseye, is actually your why, because what he's trying to illustrate is that is the most important thing that you first find. And then from that, you can develop your how you're going to do something and then what exactly you're going to do. So I thought this was a great illustration to kind of show the point that he's trying to make.
Yeah. And he delves into where most people go wrong, either personally or with your business. A lot of businesses will say they start with what, and they work their way into the inner circle. So a business would say, I'm going to build a computer. And then they say how I'm going to build a computer, and then they try to find their why like as a last resort, or not last resort, but as a secondary thought, right? Where and he does lean heavily on examples from Apple, and it's a really good one. He basically takes their mission statement and he twists it a couple different ways, and it completely resonates with you in both manners, right? Where Apple does so successfully is they have a mission statement that doesn't even mention a product. It says they're going to be innovative. They want to change people's lives. They want to do all these wonderful things. And then the byproduct of that, of their mission statement, of their why, equates to the products that they produce. So they don't go in and say, I'm going to create a new iPod and then start going into it. They focus on their mission statement and their why, and how it's going to change their people's lives. And then they create the product off of that.
Yes.
It makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And if you think about it, a lot of people who are not Apple users will kind of accuse Apple users of being in a cult. Like, it's cultish because, you and I are both Apple users. We love it. And everything I have is Apple because basically of their mission statement. Like, it makes my life easier. Every Apple product I have has every file I need on it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But they call it a cult because people are super loyal.
Because they develop that, right? He goes beyond Apple. He uses an example of Harley Davidson as well. Harley Davidson is a company that builds incredible loyalty with their customers. People, for God's sakes, they tattoo Harley Davidson all over their body, right? Yeah. I mean, that's a tale that they have used. They take their mission statement and they create a following that it lasts ups and downs. I think another example he uses is people will develop loyalty to a company even if they know there's a better product, or if they know there's a cheaper product or whatever. They will stick with that product because they're loyal to it.
Yep, even through ups and downs. And
it comes down to their big why, right? And people believe in that product no matter what.
Yeah. Something I really like too is he actually talks about how defining your why, or speaking to the why first, is actually, it's speaking to our limbic brain, which is the part of our brain where our feelings come from. So it's where we get the expression, like, go with your gut. That's your limbic brain. So our limbic brain isn't actually able to, it doesn't have language. It doesn't know how to express itself. So that's why, if I'd ask you, like, why are you married to Jen? You might say, she's pretty, she cooks well, like, blah, 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 whatever it is.
That's a joke right there. She cooks well.
We love you, Jen.
Thanks. She does. She does. Probably not going to listen to this, but thank God.
But anyway, but you really wouldn't be able to say, like, really, truly describe why she is the one for you. It would all be what's.
Yeah. You just kind of, resonates with you inside.
So that's your limbic brain. So if, as a product or a company, I can start with what my limbic brain understands. That's how you're going to start to build that loyalty. So I found that to be really interesting, that it's actually a biological part of us to respond to a why.
Yeah. On that note too, that's one of the things that I find really interesting about all these books that we read and why we read them is it might seem really rudimentary on the at the upper level, right? Obvious, common sense or whatever, right. But then you start, you start like looking at it and you're like, oh wow. Like it just, again, like the lights go off and you're like, holy crap, that makes perfect sense. And that does as well. Yeah.
And so then that kind of leads us into the second key point of the first couple chapters here is that great leaders inspire action. So like I was saying before, he kind of uses leadership and finding your why synonymously, but it's because it's so important because as leaders, especially of a company, if we don't have a clear why set out, then how do we get our employees to be loyal? That's why so many businesses have issues with it's just a revolving door. They can't keep people hired. It's because they truly haven't expressed their why. And then if they don't know why their employees are their employees, like we said, they don't know why their customers are their customers. And so they're not marketing to the right people or in the right way. So,
yeah. Inspirational leaders, obviously we all have a military, you and I have a military background.
Right.
We know, been to multiple leadership schools, multiple leadership courses, all that stuff. It can't be said enough, but it kind of ties back into what we were saying earlier. If you really believe in your cause as a leader, you're gonna inspire people to your mission statement. So from a business, it's extremely important, but also from a personal standpoint. So it might even be your family, right? That maybe, you want to take the lead on breaking free from whatever financial situation you're in, right? If you truly believe in your cause and what you're going to do, you're going to rally those people around you. And that could be, just your basic inner circle, your family, your closest friends, or from an organizational standpoint, your company.
Right.
And you need that, right? I've been on teams that don't mesh well, right? They didn't believe in the cause. Again, I'll lean back on my military experience. We'll be doing something that people think are stupid. Right. That's a lot of that in the military. There's a lot of that in the military, right? We'll be doing something, we'll be a mission. They don't really see the bigger picture. They're not buying into the overall reason, right? They think it's stupid. They don't perform like they literally just give, trying to keep it PG.
Right.
There,
yeah.
Right. But when you do have those missions where everyone believes in the amount of camaraderie, the effort, the, watching the person to your left and right kind of thing, you all
cohesive unit.
Yeah, you get so cohesive. You all come together to a head for a particular goal.
Yeah,
and it makes such a difference. It just happens.
Agreed.
As opposed to it's like pulling teeth.
Yeah, and I think as leaders, that kind of the three main points that Simon says we need to make sure that we're doing to express that why is first start with clarity. So your why can't be something that's confusing and difficult to understand, obviously. And then maintaining discipline. So just remember your why in the face of any distractions or temptations or questions, which is probably going to be the biggest deterrent is questions of people questioning you. Why did you start this business? Why are you investing? Blah, 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 things like that. So just maintaining that discipline. And then the importance of consistency with your words and your actions. So, it's really instilling the values of your why into your company and your actions.
Yeah. Consistency within an organization can't be understated. We talk about it all the time, in the military. If you try to punish people or reward people in, unequal ways, it's going to cause dissent within the organization.
Yeah.
And then it's any organization. This is not military related. The same thing happens in the civilian world. I guarantee it. If you're showing favoritism to somebody and you're not enforcing the standards in a consistent manner, there's going to be dissent. There's not going to be cohesion. It's, things like that are just going to happen. So
I think one of the best historical examples of at least a person is Martin Luther King. He didn't just talk about civil rights. He talked about why civil rights were important and why everyone should support them. And I mean, he completely changed our company. He started basically a revolution within the country, started a revolution within our country, and he couldn't have done that just by, not really being passionate and understanding his why and why he wanted to get that message of civil rights across.
I think one of the most powerful things that Martin Luther King did was, I think a lot of people today would have, especially anybody in their 20s, would have a very hard understanding of how he was able to create the movement that he did.
Mm-hmm.
No Facebook, no
Right.
social media. They couldn't send out emails. His message was so strong that it literally spread like wildfire, right? His big why was so strong that it motivated people immediately around him, and it just grew and grew and grew to a huge movement, and they all just came, right? And that's because the why was so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we still had black and white TVs back then. You know, it's not, I mean, yeah, I'm sure he was on the news a lot, but to your point, there was news and radio, and that was it. Yep. So yeah, that's really impressive. So just a couple other ways that, leaders can create why is they really need to also hire for beliefs. So when you're looking at who you want to hire, what's cool is there's actually a lot of personality tests out there that I think can really help a company, especially when they're trying to make sure that they're hiring the right person for their job, and to make sure that that person fits within their why. I mean, even at Keller Williams, we have a personality test too, which kind of helps us see what our best qualities are. But that is something that a company can use, is those kinds of tests to make sure that you're a good fit. And then, again, if you're expressing your why, especially in the beginning when you're hiring someone, making sure that they're understanding and buying in on that why, so that they will continue to be motivated to do a good job for you and stay with you as an employee.
Yeah, I mean, it's important. I'll lean back again to the organizational standpoint. Is if they don't buy into the overall mission statement, they're not going to be a good fit. Funny point or funny fact that other than military leadership stuff, that Keller Williams thing was, I've never sat in an interview.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
like a regular interview,
right? Because you went military,
right? Yes, I mean, I've interviewed for certain jobs in the military, but I would imagine it's completely different than the civilian world. But I do know for a fact that like a lot of the civilian companies and stuff, they look more for the the larger successful companies. They look more for personality and how you're going to fit in inside the company.
Yes. And they
ask you these weird off the wall questions just to see how you react. So anybody that's looking to interview for a big company,
now you know why they're asking those.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Simon Sinek also has another book called Finding Your Why. So it's almost like a workbook to this book, which is great, because if you truly are someone who's struggling in finding your personal why, buy that book, and it takes you through basically exercises or thought exercises to help you try to identify your why. But one part I really like is he has basically FAQs about finding your why. So one of them is, can my why be my family? Yeah. And he says that no, it can't actually. And the reason is because, first of all, family is a what, not a why. Yeah. They might be the reason that you are defining your why is something to, help your family, but also your why needs to be the same throughout all aspects of your life. So when you're at work, when you're with friends, whatever it is, your why is overarching for all aspects of your life.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, including myself, I had a very, very, very hard time coming to terms with this, because I always early on defined my why as my family. So why would I do anything else? Why would I try to achieve greatness or wealth or anything like that if it weren't for my family? Right. But I think what he's trying to say here is, and some people might disagree, is like the success that you bring to your family and the wealth or the generational wealth, whatever, is kind of like a byproduct of your why.
Exactly.
Not that your family is ever an afterthought, but you have to have something bigger.
You do. Yeah. Because I mean, family dynamics can change too. So it's got to be something bigger. You're right.
Yeah. I think we all know that, family can be very difficult, right? Obviously, blood is thicker than water, all that good stuff.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Things definitely change.
Another question is, can I have more than one why? And so his answer here is also no, that the why is the one common thread that brings out the best in us and makes us feel the most fulfilled. So again, you don't want to have one why when it comes to your family, one when it comes to your work, one when it comes one why when it comes to your personal things. It has to be an overarching why that basically makes you live your best life. So I found that interesting because we were having a discussion off camera that when you start multiple businesses, how do you have a why for your business then that fits every business? And so I think, we were talking with my husband, Lindsay, off camera. I think the three of us kind of came to the conclusion that you have an overarching why that is the way that you live your life. And then you can tailor a why to your business that
fits your bigger
fits
why.
in that. Yeah. And this isn't from Simon. This is kind of just how I interpret what he's saying here.
No, because if you start asking questions, it does get kind of confusing. So, and I was confused. Like I said, like you said, we were having this conversation off camera. I'm like, well, if you start multiple businesses, obviously you want to have a big why for that business. But if you're the one driving it, you have to have it operating off of your big why.
Exactly.
Right. Even if they're just completely different businesses, like if you start a technology business and then you start a real estate business or whatever, obviously they're going to have different goals in mind, but as long as they fall under the umbrella of your big why, they should all move in the same direction.
And I think goal is the key word, your goal and your mission statement for your company. That's not your why, but it needs to fit within your why. So great. And then another one is, can my why change? And we touched on this a little bit, but he says that the why is very intrinsic and it's something that's actually part of you, as you go through adolescence. By then you really have developed your key why. It's just a matter of finding it. So no, your why shouldn't change. Is there ways that maybe it will start to evolve because the first why you defined isn't your true why? That's possible. Yeah. So.
We all change, and it could be a journey of finding your why, right? You're 22 years old. You might think that that's the most important thing in your life. And then if it's not, your why is going to change.
Right. It wasn't your real why.
It wasn't your real why. Yeah, exactly. And as you grow and you find deeper meaning in life, you'll eventually zero in on what your actual why is. And then when you do find it, that's your why.
Yep. And then what if I don't have a why? And again, this kind of goes back to what we said already. Everyone does have a why. It develops as we grow up, but you have to be willing to open yourself up and be vulnerable to discover your why.
Yeah. So. Back to what I said. It's finding taking risks, growing personally, failing. If we all will fail. I think that's one of the biggest things. One of the things that all of this resonates to me, the books, the self-study, all that stuff, is dealing with failure.
Yes.
Right. And then you're going to fail probably finding your why. You're going to fail starting a new business. You're going to fail doing in a relationship or whatever. It's a matter of how you deal with the failure.
Yep. You're exactly right. All right. And then the last one, which is my favorite, is what's the reason the why is always in service to others? So when I read this, I was like, what? It has to be in service to others. Not that I was saying that my why was necessarily selfish, but when we talked about Lindsay and myself, our own whys at the last podcast, if I go back and look at it, some of it was a bit more selfish, or it was more what's rather than whys. And so for me, this was a big aha moment. And he distinguishes between, we have to find that balance between happiness and fulfillment, because a lot of what people think is their why might be what makes them happy in the moment. So that's going to be a quick, hit of dopamine. So I go and, buy a new rental property, which makes me really happy in the moment, but that's not my big why. I need to find something that's bigger for fulfillment. The fulfillment is actually the service to others, because that's what's lasting. But the key point is finding the balance between the two, because I can't only have service to others, because then I'm eventually going to feel drained and that I've done nothing to help myself. So it's finding that balance of that happiness and fulfillment of serving others.
Yeah. On the note of serving others and giving as opposed to receiving, Tony Robbins goes into this very deeply in multiple different books that he does, but giving always feels better than receiving, right? Think about it like, just as simple as something as giving a Christmas present. Like you're just super giddy for whoever you're giving the present to open it up, right? And then on the other side of that, and especially in the bigger picture, not just giving a present or something like that, the more you give, it's been shown throughout human history, the more you give, the more you receive, period.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah. So I just wanted to share, I went on Simon Sinek's website to try to find his why, and it was right there on the first page because I really wanted to see like what is an example of a good why. So his is, we are here to inspire people to do the things that inspire them so that together each of us can change our world for the better. So very general, kind of. I mean, it's maybe more general than most people think, but that's the point. Again, a why isn't a goal. It's the overarching motivation for how you're living your life.
Yeah, it goes kind of back to the Apple example where their statement is they want to create technology that changes people's lives. Mm-hmm. They're not saying they want to produce a particular product.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're very vague.
Yes, exactly. But then that helps them produce really amazing products that other companies don't have.
Yeah, so. And inspires
a cult.
Well, a cult, but inspires their designers and their, researchers to greater things.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think we've touched on a lot. I feel like it's almost kind of heavy stuff because it almost seems intangible to be able to define your why, like something that's just kind of floating out there that I can't quite figure out what it is. But hopefully we've kind of helped to set the initial stage for people to really start to dig into their why. And like I said, go out and buy Simon's book, Find Your Why, and it'll kind of help guide you through some exercises to find that. And we're really excited this month because we have a few guests that are going to be on our podcast that I think are really going to help people see why in practice.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun month for this book.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
And if you are one of the people that has defined your why and you want to share that with us, if you're watching us on YouTube or if you're listening to us, go over to our YouTube channel. We'd love for you to leave a comment and tell us what your why is. That would be amazing.
Absolutely. And as always, if you liked what you heard today, please leave a comment, share, like the video. Again, we're always respecting any kind of feedback we get. And again, we've talked about this before last month with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We're doing this podcast in kind of a systematic order. So if you would like to jump in, join us on the podcast, please, you can go back, buy a copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, start from episode 1, or if you'd like to jump in with us where we're at right now, go ahead and get you a copy of the book that we're covering now, and start with why, and join us as we continue through February with the next 3 episodes after this one, covering why.
Yeah, I love it. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thank you.